The sun was soft that evening, sinking slowly into the Indian Ocean as the waves whispered secrets to the shore. In the small Swahili village of Kijiji cha Bahari, the smell of grilled fish and spiced pilau filled the air. Drums echoed from afar, slow, rhythmic, proud. It was the season of weddings, when the air itself seemed to hum with anticipation. But in the home of Miserably there was unrest. His only daughter, Amina, had done something unheard of. She had refused every suitor who had come to ask for her hand, not because she was proud, not because she was spoiled, but because she believed love should be proven, not promised. Miserably was a respected fisherman, known for his wisdom and his calm voice that could settle any quarrel. Yet when it came to Amina, even he found himself defeated. "My daughter," he said that evening, sitting on a wooden stool carved by his grandfather, "you are now of age. Every mother in the village envies your beauty, and every father wishes his son could marry you. Why do you keep turning them away?" Amina smiled softly. Her beauty was quiet, not loud. Her dark skin glowed like polished ebony under the lamplight, her eyes deep as the sea. "Baba," she replied, her voice calm but steady. "Any man can buy fine clothes and sweet words, but only one who understands the meaning of responsibility can be a husband. I will not marry a man who cannot prove that he values more than himself." Her father frowned. "And how do you expect a man to prove that?" "I will know," Amina said. "When he stands before me, I will see what is in his heart." The very next morning, the village was buzzing with gossip. Word had spread quickly. Amina had refused another suitor, but this time it was not just any man. It was Salim bin Musa, the richest trader on the coast, whose family owned ships that traveled as far as Zanzibar and Mombasa. Salim was tall, handsome, and full of confidence. His white kanzu shone brighter than the shells on the beach, and the scent of imported perfume followed him wherever he went. He was used to getting what he wanted, and what he wanted now was Amina. He arrived at Miserably's house in a grand procession. Drummers, dancers, even a goat decorated with beads. Villagers gathered, whispering excitedly. Salim stepped forward with a smile that could charm the sun. "Miserably," he said, bowing slightly. "I come in peace and in love. I come to ask for your daughter's hand. I can give her gold, clothes, and a life beyond these shores." Miserably nodded politely. "You may speak with her yourself." When Amina appeared, she walked gracefully, her lasso wrapped neatly around her waist. Salim's heart raced. She was even more beautiful than the tale said. "Amina," he began proudly, "I have traveled the seas. I have seen the world. There is no woman as fine as you. Be my wife, and I will give you a palace in Lamu, servants to wait on you, and jewelry from the Sultan's traders." Amina looked at him, unshaken. "And what will you give of yourself, Salim bin Musa?" Salim smiled, confident. "My name, my wealth, my protection." She shook her head gently. "A name fades when it is spoken without meaning. Wealth can vanish in a storm. Protection is nothing if a heart is cold. Tell me, Salim, what do you truly offer a wife?" the crowd murmured. No one had ever spoken to Salim that way. He frowned slightly but recovered quickly. "I offer you everything you could desire." Amina smiled faintly. "Then let us test that, Salim. If you wish to marry me, you must pass a test." "A test?" Salim asked, taken aback. "I'm not a schoolboy to be tested." She folded her arms calmly. "Then perhaps you are not yet a man ready for marriage." Laughter rippled through the crowd and Salim's face turned red. "Fine," he said, forcing a smile. "What is your test?" Amina looked toward the ocean, where the sun was dipping low. "Come tomorrow at sunrise, dressed not as a trader, but as a fisherman. Bring no servants, no gold, no perfumes, just yourself." Salim blinked in confusion. "A fisherman? But I am—" "A man who wishes to prove his worth," she interrupted. "That is all I ask." Her father looked uneasy, but he did not interfere. The crowd was silent, waiting for Salim's answer. He hesitated, then lifted his chin proudly. "If that is what you want, then so be it. Tomorrow I will come as a fisherman." "Good," Amina said. "We shall see then what kind of husband you might be." That night, the village could talk of nothing else. Women laughed softly as they pounded maize, whispering, "We shall see if Salim can hold a paddle instead of a purse." Men gathered under palm trees, shaking their heads. "Amina is wise," one said. "She wants a husband who can face life, not one who hides behind silver." But Salim could not sleep. His pride burned hotter than the oil lamps in his room. "How dare she test me like a child?" he muttered. Yet somewhere deep in his heart a small voice whispered, "What if she is right?" He turned and stared at the ceiling. "Tomorrow I will prove to her that I am not weak." At dawn he appeared at Miserably's house. No gold, no silk, just a plain shirt and a fishing net borrowed from his cousin. The villagers chuckled when they saw him. "Ah, the great trader is now a fisherman," one joked. Salim ignored them. He saw Amina waiting by the shore, dressed simply in a blue kanga with white seashells at the edges. The light of morning made her glow like the first star at dusk. "You came," she said softly. "I gave my word," Salim replied. "Good," Amina said. "Then today you will fish beside my father. What you catch will feed my family tonight. That will be your test." Salim froze. "Fish! I have never—" Amina's eyes met his, steady and calm. "Then today you will learn." And so began the test that would strip Salim of everything he thought he knew, and reveal what kind of man he truly was. What awaited him at sea that day would not only test his strength, but also his pride, his patience, and the meaning of love itself. The sea was calm that morning, a mirror of blue stretching endlessly beneath the rising sun, but inside Salim bin Musa a storm was brewing. He stood beside Miserably, who was preparing his old fishing canoe, a wooden vessel worn smooth by years of salt and labor. The smell of seaweed and brine filled the air as gulls screamed overhead. "Take this net," said Miserably, handing Salim a thick rope net with holes mended by careful fingers. "It will test not your hands, but your patience." Salim took it reluctantly. His fingers, soft from a life of trade and luxury, were not built for rough ropes. The fibers scraped his skin immediately. He tried not to wince. Amina stood nearby, watching quietly. Her face was calm, but her eyes missed nothing. "The sea," she said softly, "is like marriage. It does not bow to your pride. It demands respect and endurance." Salim forced a smile. "Then today I will master it." "Let us see," she murmured. They pushed the canoe into the water. Miserably stepped in first. Then Salim followed, his fine sandals already soaked. Amina stood at the shore, her kanga fluttering in the wind as she watched them drift away. The waves rocked the canoe gently at first, then harder as they moved farther from land. Salim's heart raced. He had never been this far into the ocean without a large ship and crew. Here it was only the small wooden canoe, the old man beside him, and the endless blue. "Row," said Miserably. Salim hesitated, then began to paddle awkwardly. His arms ached within minutes. Sweat formed on his forehead. "You row as if the paddle weighs a ton," the old man said dryly. "Loosen your arms. Feel the rhythm of the waves. You must work with the sea, not against it." Salim gritted his teeth and tried again. Slowly, he found the rhythm. The paddle dipped, rose, dipped again. Splash, swish, splash. "Good," Miserably said, watching him carefully. "Now throw the net." Salim obeyed, tossing the heavy net into the water, but it tangled immediately. The ropes wrapped around his wrists and he nearly lost balance. The old man chuckled softly. "Pride makes the hands foolish." Salim glared, embarrassed. "I just need practice." "Then practice." Miserably said, his tone patient but firm. For the next hour, Salim struggled. He rowed through the net, pulled it in, again and again. Every time, it came back nearly empty. A few tiny fish flopped weakly, their silver scales glinting in the sun. Meanwhile, Miserably worked calmly, saying little. His movements were slow but sure. When he cast his net, it spread like a silver fan and returned heavy with fish. Salim's pride began to crack. He looked at his soft hands, now red and blistered. He looked at the old man beside him, strong despite his age. "How do you do it?" he asked finally. His voice low, the old man smiled. "I listen." "Listen to what?" "To the sea, to the wind, to silence. You cannot command the sea, Salim. You must learn to hear what it tells you." Salim sighed. He had spent years commanding servants, workers and traders, but never had he thought to listen. By noon, the sun burned fiercely. Sweat soaked Salim's shirt. His arms trembled from exhaustion. Miserably finally said, "Let us go back." Salim nodded, relieved. He had caught only a handful of small fish, barely enough for one meal. The old man's basket, on the other hand, was overflowing. When they reached the shore, Amina was waiting. Children ran to help pull the canoe up the beach. Her eyes went first to the baskets. One was full, the other nearly empty. Salim looked down, ashamed. "So," Amina said gently, "what lesson did the sea teach you today?" Salim hesitated. The old arrogance tried to rise, but it faltered beneath her calm gaze. That the sea does not reward those who rush," he said slowly. "That strength is not everything." Amina nodded. "And what else?" He sighed. "That perhaps I still have much to learn." She smiled faintly. "Then you are learning faster than most." Miserably clapped a hand on Salim's shoulder. "A man who admits what he does not know is a man who can grow." Salim managed a small smile. "Then let me try again tomorrow." The old man raised an eyebrow. "Are you sure?" "Yes," Salim said firmly. "If Amina's test is to prove my worth, then I will not stop halfway." That night, he stayed in the village for the first time. He slept not on silk sheets, but on a simple woven mat, surrounded by the distant hum of crickets and the salty scent of the sea. As he lay there, he thought about the day. He thought about Amina, her strength, her calmness, her quiet confidence. No woman in his world had ever challenged him this way. He remembered how the villagers had laughed when he dropped the net, how Miserably had smiled in patience instead of anger. Something about that humility unsettled him, yet it also awakened something new inside. Maybe this was the kind of wealth that could not be measured in gold. He closed his eyes, and for the first time in his life, Salim bin Musa fell asleep, not thinking about profit or pride, but about purpose. The next morning came with a cool breeze and the sound of waves calling once again. When Amina saw him walking toward the shore at sunrise, carrying the same old net, she smiled softly to herself. "Perhaps," she thought, "there is more to this man than I first believed." But the true test had not yet begun. What awaited him that day would not be on the water. It would be on land, in the heart, where no gold or glory could save him. The sun was barely rising when Amina binti Rashidi stood outside her hut, grinding maize with a calm rhythm. The air smelled of salt, charcoal, and coconut oil. From afar, she saw Salim bin Musa walking toward her again, the once proud merchant, now dressed in a plain tunic, the same one he had worn the day before. He greeted her respectfully, bowing slightly. "Asubuhi njema, Amina." "Asubuhi njema, Salim," she replied, her tone measured. "You are early." He smiled faintly. "The sea called me again." Amina paused her grinding, watching him. "You have passed the test of the sea, barely, but there is another test waiting." Salim's smile faded. "Another one?" "Yes," she said, wiping her hands on her kanga. This time, the sea will not test your arms or your patience. It will test your heart. Salim looked uneasy. And how does one prepare for that? Amina turned toward the village. By walking among those you overlook. The test began that morning. Amina took Salim to the poorer side of the fishing village, narrow huts made of woven palm leaves, children playing barefoot in the sand, women repairing torn nets and mending clothes. Salim looked around quietly. The air was heavy with the smell of smoked fish and hardship. "Do you know these people?" Amina asked. I've seen them," he admitted. "Seen them," she repeated softly. "But have you looked at them?" Her words struck him deeper than he expected. Amina stopped at the hut of an old woman named Mama Juma, whose husband had been lost to the sea years ago. She was bent with age, her eyes milky with blindness. Yet when she heard Amina's voice, her face lit up. "Amina, matoto wangu," she said warmly. "Have you brought someone with you?" "Yes," Amina replied, helping the old woman sit upright. "This is Salim. He wishes to learn what makes a man worthy." The old woman chuckled. "Ah, then he must learn to serve before he rules." Amina handed Salim a bucket and pointed to the path leading down to the stream. "Fetch her water. She cannot walk there herself." Salim hesitated. "Water from the stream?" "Yes. With your hands, Salim, not with your pride." The path was rough, filled with stones and slippery patches of mud. Salim nearly fell twice before he reached the stream. He scooped the cold water carefully, filling the heavy bucket. His arms ached, but he refused to stop. By the time he returned, sweat drenched his tunic. Mama Juma reached for the bucket with trembling hands, her voice soft with gratitude. "Mungu akubariki, kijana. God bless you, young man." Salim swallowed hard. No one had ever said those words to him with such sincerity. He had always been Bwana Salim, the merchant, the man of wealth, not Kijana, the young man who served. Amina watched quietly, noting the shift in his eyes. Next, she took him to the home of a young mother, Rehema, whose husband had fallen ill. She sat outside her hut, trying to repair a broken stool while her baby cried. "Salim," Amina said, "her husband cannot work. The roof leaks when it rains. Help her fix it." Salim blinked. "I've never built anything before." "Then today you'll learn," Amina said firmly. He sighed, then followed Rehema to the back of her hut. The roof was indeed broken. Several palm leaves had torn away. Salim climbed up carefully, using what he had seen others do. His hands bled where the rough leaves cut him, but he persisted. By noon, the roof was patched. It wasn't perfect, but it would hold. When he climbed down, Rehema pressed a small coconut into his hand. "For your kindness," she said. He tried to refuse, but Amina whispered, "Do not reject the gratitude of the humble. It is worth more than gold." He accepted the coconut quietly. The day went on. Salim carried firewood for widows. He fetched herbs for the healer. He helped children patch a fishing net. Everywhere he went, Amina followed silently, watching, testing. By evening, he was exhausted, more than he had ever been from a day of trade, but his heart felt strangely light. When they reached the shore again, the sun was dipping low, painting the water in shades of orange and gold. Salim turned to Amina. "Why did you make me do all this?" She looked at him calmly. "Because a man who seeks to lead must first learn to serve. You wanted to marry me, Salim, but you did not even know the people whose world you wished to enter." He lowered his head. "You are right. I have lived among coins, not souls." Amina smiled faintly. "And what have you learned today?" He took a deep breath. "That kindness is a language even the poorest understand. That humility is not weakness, and that, perhaps, wealth has made me blind." Amina nodded slowly. "Then your eyes are opening." She turned toward the sea, her hair catching the last light of sunset. But one test still remains. Salim frowned. Another? The hardest one, she said softly. The test that reveals whether your heart has truly changed, or if all this is just another performance. He swallowed nervously. What is it? She looked at him for a long moment, then said, Tomorrow you must face what you fear most. Not failure, not poverty, but truth. That night, Salim could not sleep. He lay awake listening to the waves and thinking about her words. The test of truth. What truth could she mean? He had done everything she asked. He had humbled himself, served others, listened, learned. What else could she want? But deep inside, a small voice whispered the one truth he avoided, the reason he had pursued her in the first place. He wanted to marry her not because of love, but because she was the one thing he could not buy. And that, he realized, might be the real test. The next morning dawned quiet and still. Even the sea seemed to hold its breath. The fishermen had gone early, and the village lay under a soft veil of mist. Salim bin Musa stood at the edge of the shore, watching the water curl and retreat against the sand. His heart was uneasy. Today, Amina binti Rashidi had said, would be his final test, the test of truth. He had faced hunger, fatigue, and humiliation. He had carried buckets of water, fixed roofs, and listened to the poor. But this was different. Truth, he thought, was harder to lift than any net. Amina appeared, wearing a bright blue kanga patterned with shells. Her posture was regal yet humble, the wind playing gently with the ends of her headscarf. You are early, she said, her tone unreadable. Salim nodded. You said this would be my final test. I came ready. Good, she said. Then follow me. She led him past the fishing canoes, past the line of huts, and into the narrow paths that wound through the mangroves. The air grew heavy with the scent of salt and wet earth. After some time, they reached a small clearing where an old man sat beside a hut made of palm wood. His face was weathered, his eyes sharp but kind. Amina bowed deeply. Babu, she said respectfully, we have come. The old man, Babu Mwinyi, the village elder, nodded. Ah, so this is the young man who wishes to marry you. Salim bowed slightly. Yes, Babu, I am Salim. Babu Mwinyi studied him carefully. You have walked far from your comfort, merchant. I can smell the city on you. But tell me, why do you seek this woman? Salim opened his mouth, but Amina spoke first. Before you answer, he must take your test, she said softly. Babu Mwinyi smiled. Ah, the test of truth. He reached into a small woven basket beside him and pulled out 3 items, a gold coin, a piece of bread, and a small seashell. He placed them in the sand before Salim. These, the old man said, are symbols. Each one represents the path a man may walk. Choose one, and I shall tell you what your heart is made of. Salim frowned, confused. What do they mean? The gold, said Babu Mwinyi, is the path of wealth and pride. The bread is the path of service and sacrifice. The shell is the path of love and humility. You may only take one. Salim looked down at the 3 objects. The gold coin gleamed in the sunlight. Familiar, comforting, powerful. It spoke to everything he had ever known. The bread was simple, even rough, like the meals he had shared with the villagers in recent days. And the shell, delicate, curved, and pale. It reminded him of the sea, of Amina, of the quiet strength in her eyes. He hesitated. Do not think long, Babu Mwinyi said. The truth of a man's heart is not found in thought, but in instinct. Salim's fingers twitched toward the gold, then froze. He thought of his merchant ships, his fine robes, the servants who bowed to him. That life had given him everything, except peace. Then he looked at Amina. She stood silently, her gaze steady, her face unreadable. Slowly, Salim reached down and took the shell. Babu Mwinyi's eyes sparkled. You have chosen love and humility. But remember, choosing is not the same as living. Tell me, Salim bin Musa, why did you not take the gold? Salim swallowed. Because I have already lived that life. I thought gold could buy everything, even love. But Amina showed me that a heart cannot be bought. And the bread? I've tried to serve, he said softly, but I still serve hoping to prove myself, not from true kindness. Maybe one day I will earn the right to choose it. But for now, the shell reminds me to listen, to soften, to love. For a long moment, Babu Mwinyi said nothing. Then he nodded. Your answer is honest, and honesty is the beginning of truth. Salim turned toward Amina, expecting her to smile, but her face remained solemn. There is one last thing, she said quietly. You must give what you value most, not with your hands, but with your heart. He frowned. What do you mean? Something you hold on to, she said. Something that keeps you from being free. Salim looked down. He reached into his pouch and pulled out a small gold pendant, the one his late father had given him, the symbol of his family's wealth. It had hung around his neck since he was a boy. He looked at it for a long moment. Then, without a word, he placed it in the sand beside the elder. Amina's eyes widened slightly. You would give that up? Yes, he said, because for the first time I see that I was never its master. It was mine. If I must lose it to gain peace, then let it go. The old man smiled faintly. Then you have passed the test of truth. But as they turned to leave, Amina stopped him. Salim, she said softly, you have proven that you can change. But I must tell you something. My test was never about earning my hand. It was about showing you who you are when no one is watching. He stared at her, shocked. You mean? She smiled sadly. Marriage cannot begin with pride and performance. I did not need a husband who could prove himself. I needed a man who could see himself. Salim's heart pounded. Then, what now? Amina looked toward the sea. Now, you return to your world. Use what you've learned. Live with truth, not title. When you can stand before me without needing to prove your worth, then, and only then, come back. He wanted to speak, to argue, to beg, but her eyes were calm and final. So he bowed deeply. Then I will go, and I will return, not as Salim the merchant, but as Salim the man. That night, as he prepared to leave, the villagers gathered to bid him farewell. The children he had played with hugged him. Mama Juma blessed him. Mzee Rashidi shook his hand with pride. Amina did not speak, but she watched him quietly as he boarded his small canoe. As the tide carried him away, she whispered to herself, the sea has many tests, but the hardest of them all is love. Months later, word spread across the coast of a merchant who no longer boasted, who gave freely, who sat and ate with his workers. They said he no longer wore gold, only a small shell around his neck. And sometimes when the moon was full, he could be seen gazing toward the horizon, where the sea met the sky, as if remembering the woman who had taught him that the richest treasure lies not in wealth, but in the heart that dares to change. Seasons had changed since Salim bin Musa left the fishing village. The palm trees had grown new leaves, children had learned new songs, and Amina binti Rashidi had carried on with her life, quiet, steady, and strong. Yet every so often, when she walked by the shore at sunset, she would pause and look toward the horizon, not waiting, just remembering. Meanwhile, far across the coast, in the bustling town of Kilindoni, the once proud merchant had become a different man. His ships still sailed, but no longer under the command of greed. He paid his workers fairly, shared food with the poor, and even built a small school near the harbour for orphans of sailors lost at sea. Gone were his silken robes and golden chains. He dressed simply now, a white tunic and sandals. Around his neck, the only adornment he wore was a small seashell, smooth and pale, like the one he had chosen in Babu Mwinyi's test. Whenever someone asked why he wore it, he would smile and say softly, "To remind me that the heart must be lighter than gold if it wishes to stay afloat." But one evening, as he sat by the docks watching the tide roll in, he overheard two fishermen talking. "Have you heard?" one asked. "Amina, the daughter of Muzi Rashidi, will be married soon." Salim froze. "To whom?" he asked quietly. They looked up, recognizing him. "Ah, Bwana Salim, yes, word is spreading fast. Amina is to marry Jabir, the young teacher from the neighboring village." Salim's chest tightened. "Jabir?" "Yes," one fisherman said. "A humble man, kind to everyone. The villagers say he reminds them of her father, gentle and wise." Salim thanked them and walked away, his thoughts swirling. Amina, married. Had she truly moved on? He had spent months changing, growing, preparing to return and show her the man he had become. But now, was he too late? That night, sleep refused to come. He stared at the moon through his window, torn between two truths, the peace he had found within himself and the ache that still lived quietly in his heart. By dawn, his mind was made up. He would return to the village, not to claim her, but to bless her. If she was truly happy, then his test was complete. When he arrived at the familiar beach, the villagers recognized him instantly. Children ran to greet him, elders smiled in surprise. "Salim, the merchant who became one of us," they laughed. He bowed humbly, handing out bundles of maize, rice, and cloth as gifts. "Not from wealth," he said softly, "but from gratitude." Finally, he walked toward Amina's hut. She was outside, arranging dried fish in a basket. When she looked up and saw him, she froze. "Salim?" He smiled faintly. "Yes, I have returned." For a moment, neither spoke. The sea wind carried between them the scent of salt and memory. "You kept your word," she said finally. "You came back not as a merchant, but as a man." He nodded. "And I came to thank you for what you taught me." Her gaze softened. "You learned well." He hesitated, then said quietly, "I also heard that you are to be married." Amina's eyes flickered with surprise, then sadness. "Ah, so the wind carried that rumor far, I see." "Is it true?" he asked gently. She sighed. "It was, but the man, Jabir, left for Zanzibar months ago to study. His heart belongs to his calling now, not to marriage. Perhaps that is how it was meant to be." Relief and guilt mixed in Salim's chest. "I am sorry for asking." "Do not be," she said. "Life gives and takes in rhythm. We must dance to its beat." That evening, the villagers gathered for a feast to welcome him back. Fires crackled, drums thumped, and laughter filled the air. Amina watched him quietly as he helped serve food, sat with the children and joined in the songs. He no longer tried to impress anyone. He no longer boasted or demanded attention. He was different, truly different. After the feast, when the moon was high, she approached him by the shore. "You have changed," she said softly. "I had to," he replied. "I thought I wanted to prove myself worthy of you. But now I see I needed to prove myself to my own soul." Amina smiled, her eyes reflecting the moonlight. "And what has your soul found?" He paused, looking out at the calm waves. "Peace and love, not the kind that demands, but the kind that gives." She nodded slowly. "Then your test is complete." There was a long silence, broken only by the sea whispering at their feet. Then she said, "You once came here seeking a bride. Now you stand before me as a man who seeks nothing, and that is why I will walk beside you, if you still wish it." Salim's breath caught. "You mean—" "Yes," she said softly. "For love should not be earned like a prize. It should be shared between hearts that have both learned truth." He bowed his head, overcome. Then let the sea be our witness." Amina smiled, "And may it remind us always that pride sinks, but humility floats." The following dawn, the village awoke to laughter and song. Amina and Salim were married under the wide-open sky, their feet in the sand, the sea whispering blessings at their backs. There were no gold decorations, no grand feast, only joy, truth, and simplicity. And when Babu Mwinyi placed his hands over theirs, he said, "You have both passed life's hardest test, to see each other not with the eyes of pride, but with the heart of truth." Years later, travelers who passed through that coastal village would speak of a humble couple who taught by example. The woman with the wise eyes and the man who once wore gold but now carried only a small seashell around his neck. They would say, "They live simply, but their peace is worth more than kingdoms." And in the evenings, when the tide came in and the stars reflected on the water, Amina and Salim would walk hand in hand, smiling at how the sea had once tested them, and in doing so, had given them